Alrighty, and we are back with Rick. Rick, what's up, dude?
Hey, not much. Fresh off our first Lonely Liberal travel expedition, which was amazing. How are you doing?
Well, good off that note. I got a double ear infection, and my hearing's even worse than normal. Listeners may know I may speak with a little bit of ample volume. So if I'm even louder than normal, my bad. I can't hear crap.
He's louder than ever, people. Strap in.
What a wild man. I'm revved up on Augmentin and prednisone, ready to go. But yeah, no, it was great. So we literally took the show on the road, which was great, to interview Dr. Abdul El Sayed, which was such a great experience. And what a great guy.
Yeah, such a cool guy. Awesome interview. You did great interviewing him. It was funny because we actually saw him speak at a rally at this coffee shop. And then last minute, they were like, he'll do interviews and questions at the tuxedo shop next door. So we ended up interviewing him in front of this like classy tux display, which I actually really liked. I think it came out great, but kind of a curveball.
Yeah. And it was definitely probably the first and last interview he'll do in front of a wall of mannequin with tuxedos on. But yeah, it was good. It definitely made the interview very lighthearted off the top, which was great because I think it immediately removed any air of seriousness, which was good. And yeah, people should take a look at that. It's on our episode before this, so yeah, take a listen if you haven't listened yet, and let us know what you think. And email us too at media@thelonelyliberal.com. The cool thing is I think we're gonna start really trying to get more and more politicians on the show. As we continue the end of the primary run, because that was great.
Yeah, for sure. And Abdul definitely secured his place as my favorite candidate this cycle, not just because of the interview, but he really is such a good candidate. He's laser focused on Medicare for all and getting money out of politics, which personally, those are my two biggest issues. But just in the way that he balances being serious and funny and relatable and articulate and smart, is just really interesting combination of skills for a politician running today. I feel like you don't see that combination too often. They're usually better on some of those things, but he does have that full package, which is, great. And yeah, it's nice to see.
Totally. And of course, this weekend, which we were invited to go to, but we both had to come back to Boston, was the rally they had in Detroit with both AOC and Bernie. So they came out to Michigan to canvass with him. And it is interesting because Bernie has definitely been a little bit more liberal with his endorsements this election cycle than AOC. She's been a little bit more particular. I mean, famously, I guess, she didn't endorse Platner the entire time. And so I like that she's gone. I don't want to say it makes it almost seem more serious, because obviously Bernie's kind of the elder statesman in the relationship, but it does seem like she's a little bit more picky, which is a good thing, I think.
100%. Yeah, we looked up maybe a month or two ago the list of all the endorsements Bernie and AOC have given for midterm candidates, and AOC had only endorsed 3 people at the time. So it's been a few more than that, but Bernie's endorsed a few dozen. So part of it, I think, is maybe Bernie is on the way out, and he's doing everything he can to elevate younger voices, and maybe AOC can be a little bit more particular about who she attaches herself with. But I definitely feel like the AOC endorsement means a lot because she is rarer with it, especially outside of New York.
Definitely. And it does feel like she definitely is teasing a potential presidential run. I mean, every time they ask her, she cheeses it up and hams it up and it gets all coy and smirky. So
little old me?
Yeah, she's like, I don't know. She gets all coy, which she's not typically very coy. She's usually pretty sassy. So either she's just doing it as a gimmick just because she's having fun with it, or she's genuinely going to do it. And I mean, that would definitely explain partly too why she's being a little bit more cautious with her endorsements, because 2028 is in 2 years.
Yeah, for sure. Even I was just watching that New York Times interview with Mamdani they just did a few days ago, one of the really long sit downs, and the interviewer pressed him on is AOC running for president, will you support her? And Mamdani's just like, she's great, I don't know what she's doing, but stop asking me about presidential stuff. I'm a brand new mayor.
I'm mayor of New York and I've done it for 6 months. But it's been probably the most publicized mayoral run, like for the first 6 months that I can think of. I feel like everything he does. I mean, I saw something this week that was like Zoran declines pay raise and people giving him his flowers, which fair enough. But also, he had kind of no choice, right? If he had taken like a $300,000 salary 6 months in, he would have got killed.
Right.
So I guess he really had no choice. But yeah, so no, Michigan was great. Obviously, that primary is coming up. It's August 4th. Abdul El Sayed versus Haley Stevens, who is an interesting candidate in herself. I mean, in a vacuum, she's probably fine, right? Like, just fine. Now, liberals, like very progressive people, will say, well, she's very pro-Israel and AIPAC and stuff like that. Yeah, not great, but a lot of these guys are pretty neutral, these random Democrats throughout the country. I don't think they're bad or good. None of them are. She's not like Fetterman. Like, Fetterman is just awful. I'm thinking about doing an episode on him specifically. He's just an absolute nut. Because I think Fetterman is worse than maybe a third of the Republicans at this point.
Yeah, he's real bad. And yeah, everyone's kind of afraid of like voting for the next Fetterman. They're like, was Platner the next Fetterman? Is Steven, could Abdul be a Fetterman? No. Like everyone's like on high alert just because this one dude in basketball shorts promised he was liberal and that actually wasn't. But also there was a severe stroke and hospitalization in between him being liberal and turning conservative. So
he says
I have no idea.
It awakened him.
Yeah.
He's such an asshole. Yeah, no, I don't know. I really want Abdul to win. Yeah, he came off incredibly intelligent. The thing I came away from it being was like, damn, this guy knows his stuff. And he definitely feels, granted, we haven't met like Tallarico or some of the other guys, kind of, Chris Rabb or stuff like that, who have been part of this 2026 push of progressives. But he definitely, at least from what I know, seems like one of the more sophisticated candidates in terms of just he can talk about anything, can kind of pivot around. Frankly, I find it impressive that he could just even shoot the shit with us so casually, just meeting us right off the bat. I know that's not, are you a good senator? But it is a good sign that you can kind of chameleon around, I think.
Yeah, for sure. He went from speech to meeting voters to doing a newspaper interview to doing a podcast. With us, yeah. Like rapidly, like that all happened within like 30 minutes, just back to back to back. Yeah, he's very comfortable, I feel like, behind the mic, kind of talking about anything, which is a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, and not something that you see often from a lot of these guys. Yeah, and then the last thing I'll say about that is also one of the things that I felt good right when we met the team, his campaign staff, was they were just so incredibly cool. And I feel like that does speak volumes for the candidate. I mean, you and I have worked on campaigns. Obviously, we've interacted with several politicians and their staff. And I do feel like usually the staff is a reflection of the candidate to an extent. And his staff was just they really are bought in on Abdul. And you can tell it's like, it's great. I thought it was really just so cool how truly into it they felt.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, like so motivated, but also funny, but clearly very locked in the right way, going from like event to event to event every day. And this is the crunch time, right? We got pretty much 2 weeks plus a couple days until the primary, and they're polling pretty much tied. So it's really like this is going to be a major couple weeks. But I'm optimistic. I think Abdul will pull it off narrowly, and I do think he'll win in the general and be the future leader of the Democratic Party. But we do have to get through this primary first.
Yeah, Stevens is not going to keel over, I don't think. She's good. She's got the folksy Michigan thing going for her, and she clearly gets along with a lot of the Democrats in Congress because they all have kind of rallied behind her. More so than they rallied behind Mills versus Platner. Mills had like the Schumer endorsement, but really all of these Democrats are kind of coming out for Stevens, which is, I mean, you have Crockett coming back out of the woods to endorse her and get things going. So yeah, anyways, it was a great week. It was super cool. Huge shout out to him and his team. I'm sure we'll be talking with them again. So, yeah, check out the episode. But we got a week of news. Holy cow, what a week. We didn't do a show last Sunday, so I just wanted, before we get into this week's news, probably the biggest news story of the week before was Lindsey Graham dying. And a few people have asked, like, what do we think about that? And it's always funny when a guy who did so much damage dies, because you're kind of screwed no matter what you say. If you go after him wicked hard, how dare you? We haven't even buried the body yet, blah, 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 blah. And if you say anything good about him, you're a shill, right? So it's kind of a lose-lose commenting on a conservative dying. I'll say this. Lindsey Graham was probably one of the biggest examples of someone who I truly believe didn't believe anything he was saying for the last 8 years of his life. And there's a special type of evil that comes with, I think, that's different from the Marjorie Taylor Greene type of mania or something like that. He was a lot more in the Marco Rubio type of insanity. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Lady G, as they call him, maybe the most worst kept secret of DC, the gayest man out of that state. But, yep, what can you do?
Yeah, like you said, it's kind of a lose-lose. After Charlie Kirk's death, I thought, like, the outpouring of praise of him as, like, this martyr of American values was so over the top, where I was just like, I'm not going to participate in that. Like, yeah. I don't think he should have been killed, but also I'm not going to exaggerate any positive feelings I have for him. It's kind of the same way. I mean, Lindsey Graham's such a weird one because he hitched his wagon entirely to John McCain for the first half of his political life. John McCain dies, and he instantly hitches his wagon to John McCain's biggest enemy, Trump. There was zero downtime in between those two. Zero opportunity for Lindsey Graham to maybe become his own person. Wasn't interested in that. Just went full MAGA. It's just awful.
Crazy.
I mean, I think pre-MAGA, you could argue he was one of the more bipartisan senators. Like John, because he was so connected to John McCain, and John McCain was someone that was willing to work with Democrats on a lot of issues. It's like you said, it's tough to say anything about Lindsey Graham's career of the past 8 years or so.
Other than he condemned Trump January 6th and said, I'm out, I'm done with this guy. Played around a golf with him and was right back. I mean, yeah. Lindsey Graham is funny because I bet you if we met him and talked to him, I bet you we would get along better than we would get along with a lot of Republicans, because I genuinely don't think he believed a large swath of what he was peddling. But yeah, I don't know. I almost find that worse, like ethically. I don't know. It's tough how someone could feel about that. I'm curious what other people think about this. But yeah, the craziest thing about the Lindsey Graham news, which this week, is that 3 days after he died, Trump recommends his sister. And in South Carolina, they don't have special elections for when a freaking senator dies. The governor appoints them. So after Trump tweets about his sister replacing him, McMaster, the governor there, immediately appointed her. So basically, the president of the United States handpicked a senator, which is crazy.
Yeah, within days of the senator dying. Obviously, this is what Republicans hit Democrats so hard for with the Biden-Kamala thing, right? Is that they just picked somebody and didn't give the opportunity. I mean, even if it was McMaster's decision, they could have waited a week, right?
Yeah.
To maybe interview some candidates, maybe do some vetting.
She's never even had public office before. Like, she's not a politician at all, his sister. So Trump just said it. And it's just like the tariff stuff. He tweets it out and it just seems to happen.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And Lindsey was up for election this term. So there is going to be a special primary in a few weeks. But that will be deciding who the Republican is to run in November. So obviously, Lindsey's sister is instantly the senator from now through January, whenever the new person takes office.
And probably the perceived frontrunner, because Lindsey Graham had already won his primary, like you said. So yeah, pretty crazy. I mean, part of the reason why they're rushing about this is because this week they're trying to confirm both Todd Blanche as Attorney General and Clayton as the DNI head to replace Tulsi Gabbard. And specifically with Blanche, the committee is broken because Graham sat on that committee. So they need 11 Republicans to get Blanche through. And now they don't have one of their dudes because he died. So I'm sure they're partly wanting to funnel her in so they can just confirm whoever they want. And yeah, it was a crazy week of confirmation hearings. For the Blanche one, Tom Tillis, who is quitting after this year because he says he can't handle Trump, and then proceeded to speak like a normal person after saying Trump can no longer hurt me. I don't know what it is. Also a giant coward. I mean, slightly better than full cowardice like Pam Bondi, but not good that it took him retiring to be normal. He said that Blanche needed to meet the Epstein survivors before the committee would vote. Blanche met them Thursday, and the survivors came out more opposed to him after meeting him, which is terrible. What did he say to them?
Well, and Blanche was the one who has the most aggressive statement during the handling of the Epstein files. Didn't he say flat out, there's nothing? Like, there's nothing in them. He was the most forceful. This is a complete conspiracy. We don't even know if Epstein was bad. This dude is like the extreme. He's like the biggest Epstein defender in the administration. And Tillis, like you said, like it's nice to see him grow some balls as he quits as he cowardly quits and runs from public office. But even this, him saying, I really think Blanche needs to meet with Epstein survivors before I can confirm him. Blanche being like, okay, I'll meet with them within the next few days. And Tillis being like, great, then yeah, he'll probably get my vote. It's like, aren't you concerned about him choosing not to prosecute any of the perpetrators and his handling of the files and of the victims before now? Just because Tillis is like, hey, can you just talk to these survivors, and then that will show me that you're actually a great guy. Like, what does this discussion even mean?
And they came out saying we don't like him even more. They met him and they said this guy sucks. For people who don't know, Todd Blanche was Trump's personal defense attorney before he became Lieutenant Attorney General and then now trying to become the actual Attorney General. Also, he was the one that Pam Bondi has now officially thrown under the bus for being the person responsible for the mishandling of the Epstein files. And I don't think that's getting enough weight, even if you think there is no one to prosecute. Even if you're like the Epstein files are a big nothing burger, you can't argue that they weren't handled terribly. And so the guy's only responsibility as the Lieutenant Attorney General was handle these files, and everyone says he did a terrible job, so he should get promoted?
Right.
It's pretty stupid. So also, interestingly enough, Cornyn, who was one of the senators getting ousted by Trump, is also on this committee from Texas, Cornyn. He says he's not voting for him because he can't believe the IRS plea deal of the anti-weaponization fund and the clause saying that Trump can never be investigated by the IRS ever for the rest of his life, him or his family. And yeah, it's just such a sad state of affair that now all of a sudden John Cornyn will say, okay, I'll actually say something normal, where I guarantee you if he had won the primary and Ken Paxton had lost, he would be lapping up Todd Blanche.
Yeah, Trump has really terrified the entire Republican Party into saying anything normal.
Yeah.
Saying anything that could somehow be portrayed as anti-Trump. You only hear it when people are outgoing and not running for re-election. Like, he has such a hold. It's unbelievable.
It's crazy.
And Cornyn, like, it's so sad that we're praising these lukewarm statements from these guys like Tillis and Cornyn. But, like, It is something. Like, they should get praise for being the only ones willing to say it. But when Cornyn was talking about why he may not vote for Blanche, he said, to be Attorney General of the United States, you have to walk a very narrow path between being the chief law enforcement officer of the country and then being the president's guy. Yeah, I think the first one's a little more important. I don't think the job description of AG is be the president's guy.
I
don't
would
think
call that a
part's in there.
tightrope.
You at least should be pretending to be the first one.
Not tightrope walking the two. It's ridiculous. No, it's so dumb. And I just, like, it's such a different version of cynicism because there's one thing if you're just crazy. A nut is going to be a nut. And I don't want them to win. I don't want them to participate. But, if people like crazy people, fair enough. What can you do? People are different. But these people who are just so outwardly showing that they haven't believed anything they've said for the last 8 years, instantly, as soon as they don't have any political consequence on what they say, it's just so diabolically crazy to who they represent. Because, so if you're from Texas, are you just like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, what, you've been telling me that you thought this guy was the man for the last 8 years. You don't get the job anymore. And now they're going to rule it off as, oh, he's just being petty. It's because Trump doesn't like him, yada, yada, yada. And it's just so sad. So it's just a sad state of affairs. These people are such cowards.
Yeah, 100%. It's so much worse than Trump's first term, too, which was bad. Yeah. Like, it was already bad in this way. But now he's literally scrubbed the entire political party of anybody that's not 100% loyal. If somebody like John Cornyn is 97% loyal to Trump, not good. Not good enough. You got to bump that number up. We need pedophile defending Ken Paxton to jump in the race.
I know. If we don't get literally impeached for bribery and insider trading 2 years ago into the race, then what are we going to do? It's crazy. And yeah, nothing probably displays this degree of cowardice than the repeated dodging of either judges or nominees on answering the question, who won the 2020 election. We've now, I'm sure many of our listeners and viewers have seen these clips throughout social media, whether it's Blumenthal from Connecticut or whatever. Like, random judges is the classic one. They come up and they go, who won the 2020 election? And then they say, Joe Biden was certified as the winner in 2020. And they go, well, why was he certified? And it says the electoral process dignified that. And they said, do he win? And then he says, oh. And it's this rigmarole that they won't say Joe Biden won. And we'll talk more about Trump's electoral nonsense later. But it's a lot of people probably wonder, why are they asking that? It's not relevant, right? And it is relevant because when you're nominated for these offices or as a judge, independence is probably the number one thing. Like, you can think for yourself. And so if you're such a coward that you can't answer just like an obvious fact when Trump isn't there while you're under oath in Congress, then no, you shouldn't be a judge. And so Senator John Ossoff, he asked this to Jay Clayton, who is going for DNI head. And I thought it was a good version of him pressing him on his cowardice. So I thought we could play the clip because, yeah, John Ossoff, I think he's just started working out and getting a lot more mad. I like this new image for him. Ripped, serious Ossoff. So here we go.
2020 election.
I'm not going to do this with you.
This is a job interview. We've established that you have an obligation to be honest and forthright with the committee. Yes, you do have an obligation to be honest and forthright with the committee?
Yes.
Who won the 2020 election?
Like I said, I'm not going to get into that with you.
But you do have an obligation to be honest and forthright with the committee.
Is anything that I just said not honest or forthright?
Yes, you're not being honest or forthright. Who won the 2020 election?
I think I've answered the question. We can keep doing this.
Well, we're going to keep doing it because you're not being honest and forthright.
No, I'm not going to engage in the theater.
It's a simple question, Mr. Clayton.
And I've answered.
Who won the 2020 presidential election?
I've answered it.
You're here asking for the support of senators to lead America's intelligence community. We've established that you have an obligation to be honest and forthright with this committee and with the American public, but you refuse to answer a simple matter of fact about the 2020 election. Is that right?
No, that's not right.
Then answer the question. Who won the 2020 election?
I have answered.
Answer it. What is your answer?
I've given you my answer.
What is your answer? You refuse to answer a basic question about who won a presidential election, but you asked to lead America's intelligence community? Isn't it humiliating to be unable to answer this question, to have to indulge the president's delusions? We know, you know, everybody in this room knows the truthful answer to that question. Why can you not give it?
I think I gave you the answer.
Brutal. Just brutal. just a brutal moment of cowardice, I guess.
Absolutely brutal. I mean, it goes without saying I don't have to answer this is not an answer. That guy seems to think that. Like, he's like, I'm not answering it. You need to give an answer. I just gave an answer. No, you didn't. You said
Yes,
I don't want to give an answer. It's insufferable, and it's so stupid to say, why does this question matter? He's leading the intelligence, and we're talking about an attempted overthrowing of an election. And whether or not you think the January 6 riots was, like, nearly successful, or if you just think it was 100 crazy people that, you know, should just be punished and let's not overanalyze it. Like, either way, they wanted to overturn the results of the election. That was the entire point of January 6th. That's what Trump has said. He wants to overturn it. Trump's, obviously, there's the leaked phone call of Trump begging the guy from Georgia, saying, please find me 12,000 more votes or whatever it was.
Which is so crazy that doesn't get played more. Like, that, I can't believe people just kind of, like, shrug that off.
Right. If Trump knew that he actually won and it was all fraud, why is he begging a state official to find more votes for him? Shouldn't he already have the evidence? Right.
That's the fraud.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. He has to answer the question. And if he wants to say the 2020 election was fake and there's fraud and whatever, which clearly he would say in an interview on Fox News, but he doesn't want to go that hard in this nomination hearing. Even that would be better. I mean, this is just the worst of the worst.
This is exactly what we've been talking about I'm 100% sure he knows Joe Biden won the election. And he literally won't because he's such a cowardly baby. That's the only reason, you know? And yeah, it's one of these moments where you realize that they're not even able to say anything that Trump doesn't agree with in any capacity whatsoever. It's not, you can't even say, like, did Trump University go bankrupt? They would say whatever Trump said. No, it was unfair. Blah, 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 blah. It was a scam. It was this. Like, no matter what Trump says, they just parrot it. And it's so bizarre. And I just want people to remember that when Biden was president, whether you think he was good or bad, Democrats didn't agree with him about many things, if not anything. They couldn't even pass any legislation because there was so much infighting with Joe Manchin about, you know, whatever, renewable tax credits or whatnot. So this is bizarre and this is unprecedented. And I've never seen more willing delusion from people, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's also worth saying, we didn't really talk about this yet, but obviously this dude is trying to replace Tulsi Gabbard. And Gabbard resigned, one of, I think, 4 of the women in office to have resigned. I think only women so far have resigned in terms of the heads of different departments. And it came out like a week or two after that she was a part of this cult in Hawaii. And I, again, kind of went under the radar that she's in this cult. And something that I would have loved to have seen come up during her confirmation hearing. Why are you involved in this cult? How did that not make the confirmation hearing?
That's a good question because I've known about it for years, since before those confirmation hearings. I definitely, since 2020-ish, I would say I've heard about it. Obviously, she was in the House as a Democrat before her MAGA turn the past few years. But yeah, I remember her hearing that she was basically raised in this cult in Hawaii, stereotypically run by this very socially conservative cult leader, which caused issues for her when she was running as a progressive Democrat because of how opposed to gay rights this religious sect is. Seems like something that should have been asked about, but, you know, people will say it's religion, so it's completely off the table.
But, yeah, I'd like to know that. I'm sure if she was Muslim, they'd want to know. But
of course.
But God forbid, this weird, random cult. Yeah, speaking of secretaries that should be resigning in disgrace, Pete Hegseth's made the news again this week, and this time talking about T levels. Testosterone levels. Now, this last month has probably been the most I've ever heard politicians in the United States talking about testosterone in my life. And if that isn't a direct effect of Rogan and
usually
RFK,
it's just me talking about it.
Yeah, you're the only person I've ever known who is so concerned with T levels. And now I'm hearing, James Tallarico, we got to get a panel done. Everything's got RFK saying if you want to grow it, make sure you eat gopher scrotum or whatever. These people are all freaking. Abdul definitely has T levels. Talk about it,
dude. Don't need to test it.
Dude, he told us he could bench 315. That was awesome. So Pete Hegseth, though, this week put out a video saying that he's going to start screening the military for their T levels. Have you seen this video?
Unfortunately, yes.
I'm gonna play it for our loving audience because they need to hear this crap. This stuff is just there. Also, can we stop pretending that this guy is just like the picture of masculinity? I know he slicks his hair back and kind of has a little bit of a Homelander thing going on, but dude. But anyway, let's watch. Hegseth announced testosterone deficiency screening for troops.
We have the most elite warriors on the face of the earth. Every single day, you are pushed to your absolute physical and mental limits to master the profession of arms. We demand your all, and you give it. But while we invest heavily in our weapon systems, platforms, and gear, our most decisive tactical advantage will always be the individual warfighter. We have a sacred duty to maintain that advantage, which is why we must constantly look for new ways to optimize your performance, your resilience, and your long-term health. And to meet that commitment today, I'm authorizing a new screening program for testosterone deficiency for our service members, ensuring you have the right testosterone levels to operate at your absolute best. This initiative, it's not about artificial enhancement. It's about restoring and optimizing your natural capabilities, protecting your longevity, and ensuring you have the biological foundation required to sustain life.
So it's just crazy to me that we are in the middle of a war, right? One that 2 soldiers have died this week in Iran because their inability to negotiate a ceasefire is just egregious, and the war rages on. That whole MOU thing was total BS. They've asked for over $1 trillion for defense spending, right? They need more things and stuff like that. And they take all this in and go, yeah, but have we checked the T levels of these people? That's the thing. We need $1.5 billion. We can't beat Iran, a country that is just infinitely less well off than the United States is in terms of just every economic indicator possible. And what's holding us back is T levels? It's crazy. This is just because they're trying to make some random slight towards women and or trans people. Definitely. Or fat people or something. I don't know. This is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's insane. And the thing with testosterone, and I'm obviously talking about cisgender males that are trying to get on testosterone here. The thing with telehealth and all these sketchy companies where, you do one phone call and one blood test is that there's no recognition of what's considered low T anymore. So all these telehealth companies will test you. And if your numbers come back, let's say average or slightly below average, but still firmly in the middle of the healthy range, they will prescribe you testosterone, which you have to stay on for life just to bump you up to the highest end of normal or right above normal. So these companies are super sketchy and giving testosterone to tons of men that don't need it, that are still young, and that just complain about being tired or having erectile dysfunction or something, even when their blood tests show they have healthy testosterone levels. And then you have guys like Joe Rogan and RFK who are just juiced out of their goddamn minds on not just testosterone, but HGH, all these experimental peptides. And when they're asked about it, they're like, oh, I'm on testosterone replacement therapy because I'm getting older and it just replaces the levels. Like, no. They are what we call blasting steroids.
They are just doused in steroids.
Yeah.
Your head doesn't get that red.
70-year-old RFK does not need to be that ripped and red, right?
And his head just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And redder and redder and redder.
And the ultimate irony, of course, is that isn't this a form of gender-affirming care? You have all these men that don't have diagnosably low testosterone. They have average or slightly low, but they feel like something's off. So they need to be given more of the male hormone. so they can have more energy and confidence. I mean, it's really kind of unbelievable.
It's insane. And it's also just so embarrassing because they're losing a war right now. Currently, we are losing a war and we don't even have ground troops on. Like, it's just so stupid. Like, this whole Iran war thing is one of the weirdest things I've ever experienced in my life. Because when we were younger and it was Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff like this, or you could say, you know, even with Obama with Libya or Syria even, or ISIS and things like that, it felt like the politicians were recognizing that we were in war. I've never, like, am I taking crazy pills or is nobody acting like we're currently losing a war? Like, we are in a war, losing, and people are dying now. Strikes are going off. We're killing civilians, apparently. And I don't hear anyone talking about it, right? Like, the head of the Defense Department is rambling about T levels. It's just, I just feel like there's no effort to actually end this war. It's going to be a forever war. I'm like more confident than ever this isn't going away for potentially years.
Yeah, and estimates about the cost of gas, the increased cost, is now in the hundreds of millions from this war to Americans, costing Americans hundreds of millions of dollars. You obviously add that to the tariffs, too, for the list of ways that Trump directly increased prices in a way that really no president ever has. As we've talked about before, like, presidents can sign bills that have effects on prices, but Trump is so directly causing these price increases instantly through war and tariffs. It's kind of unprecedented. But yeah, it's almost, to your point, it's almost like they've gotten all this polling about how unpopular the war in Iran is, and they're like, let's just stop talking about it. Like, clearly,
let's just pretend it doesn't happen.
Clearly, there's no good explanation for why America is this involved.
And doing so poorly.
On an America First agenda, right? And doing so poorly, so let's just stop talking about it.
I can't believe how poorly we're doing. Like, that's the thing. It's one thing to go into war with Iran when you absolutely shouldn't. It's another thing to be egregiously inhumane with the way you behave. These are things that America has done, unfortunately, for a long, long time, that we are highly critical of. But they don't. It's just like Iraq, actually, I guess, in the same way that, like, you just felt like this isn't going well, right? Like, all of a sudden there's just like a thought, like, we're never going to get out of here, you know? Like, this isn't going to be good. And that MOU breaking within, like, a week or whatever, and now they're striking and troops are dying and things like that. Like, this is going to go on, I think, for the rest of his term, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be on a Democratic president to end the war, like the last two major wars.
Yeah,
we were
I think so, too.
And then they'll get criticized for pulling out troops too fast, even though the entire country has been begging both Republicans and Democrats to pull out the troops fast.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I don't understand how people don't put these things together, I guess. I mean, I guess people's memories are just so short term. But you're right. A Democratic president will be elected, hopefully in 2028. The economy will be in shambles. We'll be in war with Iran. They'll take a term to try to, like, get things back to neutral. It won't be great, but it will be neutral. And everyone will hate them. And then we'll go back into this cycle.
Right.
That's going to happen. It happens every time.
Right. And let's remember Trump ran on finally ending the war in Afghanistan in 2016.
He's run on everything.
And never did.
Trump has run on every platform, apparently, and hasn't done anything. What hasn't Trump stood for at one point? He's such a piece of shit. And, yeah, I hate him.
What's so funny about that, and it really underlies how Trump has remained this popular, is when other politicians do that, like famously Mitt Romney, they get called chief flip-flopper, like the ultimate flip-flopper. But when Trump does it, Trump has managed to convince people that the thing, of course I've said I'm pro-choice and I've said I'm pro-life, but he convinces, like, pro-choice Republicans he's secretly pro-choice, he just has to say the pro-life. And then he's convinced the pro-life Republicans he used to pretend to be a Democrat. So, like, this is how he's maintained this grip on the whole party, is he's taken an opinion on everything, but instead of people seeing him as a flip-flopper, they believe the position I like is his real position.
Yep. They find a clip of him saying something that they think is right, and then they stay with it. And he's also so good at like using his executive orders that do nothing, but like using them as ways to show that he's doing something. Like he'll sign an executive order like saying prescription drug prices must go down. Nothing will happen. And he'll say, I'm the only person who signed an order. Like he does that really like effectively. He finds the best smoke screens to do nothing and use them for his marketing. But yeah, I mean, speaking of, I love saying speaking of, I said that when we were talking to Abdul, I said, speaking of muscles, I heard you can bend 315, which is a terrible transition. But
he had a great response, though, which is, you didn't just hear it. There's videos.
Yeah,
videos out there.
That is a great response. People really should watch that. He did a great job. Well, speaking of roided out maniacs, Joe Rogan had a big podcast this week. He had JD Vance on for a 3-hour interview. Now, Vance, this is his second time on. He is doing a book tour because, of course, the active vice president is giving a book tour during an active war. Like, I don't know. I'm going to be blue in the face talking about why is no one caring that we're spending $500 billion on a war that we're losing. I'm not going to shut up about it. I know the listeners are probably sick of me whining about it, but I'm not going to shut up about it. I think it's crazy. I hate war. Anyway, sorry. So Rogan's here, and there were a lot of clips that came out of this episode. One of them being Rogan kind of pressing Vance on Israel and Vance kind of waffling a bit. There was also one about the Epstein files where Vance admitted that they fumbled the Epstein files and stuff like that. But two things I wanted to say before I play a clip of Rogan acting like a total idiot. One thing is this anti-AIPAC, anti-Israel stuff, right? I totally understand why people on the left are very concerned and focused on if politicians are taking money from AIPAC, where they stand on the genocide in Gaza, and what their view is on the Israeli government, specifically Netanyahu in general. Like, all of that makes total sense to me, and I totally understand wanting to know where your politician stands on this stuff. So I'm not saying that I don't get it. I do think, though, that it is maybe a false indicator of someone's values, you know, and does not tell a complete story at all about what someone thinks, I guess. And the reason why I know this is that someone like Abdul would be like, I don't want to take money from AIPAC. I don't want to take money, blah, blah. Someone like Graham Platner could say the same thing, but also someone like Tucker Carlson would say that, or Joe Rogan would say that. And none of those guys share a similar platform whatsoever. Yet they would all agree on, should AIPAC be giving money to politicians? Should we be in Israel? And I just want people to realize that, because it's not a really good indicator of where someone stands on pretty much any issue other than maybe foreign intervention.
100%. Especially when you have a lot of these PACs donating to candidates all over the spectrum, right? Because now I think they're doing that because they want to influence those politicians, but they're not always just donating to one specific candidate over the other. And I also think the way the right has latched on to this issue as like AIPAC is the problem. Like, the problem is super PACs and special interests and corporate PAC donations. That's the problem, right? And obviously AIPAC is one of the bigger offenders there, but you don't hear that from the right. Like, you don't hear, we should stop taking money from JP Morgan's PAC. We should stop taking oil and coal and gas lobbyist money. Like, they've solely focused on AIPAC, whereas Abdul is like, I'm not taking any of this money. Like, AIPAC is such a big role in the Abdul race because they're spending so much on Stevens. So it's like a drastic example. But in general, you have like the progressive wing of the Democratic Party saying like, we want to overturn Citizens United and we want to make it illegal for these PACs to give unlimited amounts of dark money to campaigns. And you have Republicans not wanting to do any of that.
No, in fact, they were the ones who brought to the Supreme Court the case that said, can they just give money, unlimited money, directly to the politician just a couple weeks ago? That was the RNC who brought that to court. So, yeah, no, not only do they not want to do it, they're actively campaigning the other way to increase the amount of money going in. So anyway, sorry, I cut you off, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think that's my point. You can see it as like a smart political maneuver from Republicans because they are able to be like, I'm opposing AIPAC, but they don't have to comment on the millions of dollars of oil money and banking money and everything else that's poured into super PACs supporting them, they can just say, like, I don't like this one particular one, so therefore I'm independent.
It's just crazy.
It's a massive disconnect, and it's one that obviously the Democratic establishment needs to get on board with. They're still not on board. It's still more of the Bernie wing that goes out of their way to oppose all this money. But it's still a giant difference between the two parties and the way they talk about donations.
Well, it's one of the few bipartisan things, not in terms of the politicians, but in terms of their bases, that just not wanting to give money to Israel for whatever reason. And I understand it from the Democrat side, just because it was such a big issue and such a flop for Biden during his last year of his presidency. And the way Kamala talked about it turned off so many people, clearly. But I just want people to realize, and this is probably a longer conversation for another day, but like, these things don't indicate the caliber of person someone is or how they'll view something else. Okay, you're anti-AIPAC and you're anti-giving money to Israel when they're doing genocides and stuff like that. Okay, what does that tell me about your views on energy? Or what does it tell me about your views on healthcare or crypto regulation or money in politics in general, to your point, or gun control or climate change or whatever, right? Politics is much more complicated, I think, than people want to say. And I understand that this is an issue right now for basically everybody, and that's why everyone's so hyper-focused on it. But because of that, I think people are totally missing how to evaluate candidates. And that's partly how we end up with people like Platner wiggling through the process effectively until it got too crazy. There are other topics. I get it's an important topic. I'm not saying it isn't important. I'm just saying, like, it's not the full picture. Because if Tucker Carlson also agrees with you, then you're probably not capturing someone's total identity. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And Rogan is in that same vein, where he'll say, and it's why I think, again, maybe a longer conversation for another day, this spectrum of left and right is just totally broken because Trump has been so anti-free market, so anti-small government, so anti-religion, frankly. He's attacked the Pope more than anyone I've ever met in my life. That now the Republican Party represents nothing that it traditionally did, and the left is now not really progressive either, because these issues aren't really, I wouldn't say not being interventionists on a foreign international level. I don't think that's left or right, just a view. And so I actually am starting to come of the mind that all of these labels are just really stupid and really starting to actually be more harmful than good. And I know our show's called Lonely Liberal, but that's a good example, right? Because liberal actually has a definition. And I don't know. What do you think about this before we move on to Rogan?
Yeah, I agree. And definitely in college, I was more of a supporter of the quadrant political spectrum, where it's two axes, and one is roughly left and right on economic intervention, and one is up and down roughly on authoritarian versus libertarian civil liberty debates. I think the reason that one, which is more accurate than just the left and right, but the reason that really doesn't work anymore is because the Republicans are still trying to sell themselves as in the libertarian right economic quadrant, which is associated with things like protecting civil liberties, lower taxes, free trade, no tariffs. So they're still talking that game, but they don't believe or vote for any of those things.
Yeah.
So it really does make the whole thing meaningless. And it goes back to the should Democrats call them socialist debate. Part of the reason that whole debate is meaningless is because every American politician basically is somewhere in between complete unregulated capitalism and government-controlled socialism. Every single person is somewhere in between that.
If you believe in Medicaid or Medicare, you are in there. If you even think they should exist, you inherently fit that because that's a government program. Anyway.
Right. I don't even think people like Thomas Massey and Rand Paul, who are definitely at one wing of that, I don't even think they're really for completely no regulations. They just want less regulations. Of course, there's certain issues. So, yeah, it's really not that helpful anymore. I think socialism is in a strong place within the Democratic Party just because it's signaling to people, I'm going to be different than the Democratic establishment. And that's valuable in and of itself. But The reality is Obama and Bernie are both somewhere in between capitalists and socialists.
Yes.
It's just Bernie's a little more towards the socialist direction.
And Trump is more socialist than any Democrat in office other than maybe AOC and Bernie, I think, in terms of what he's actually done. We talk about it on our show, but Trump buying 10% of Intel with the U.S. government, the U.S. government now owning 10% of Intel, is the most socialist thing I think has happened I can think of in a long time. I don't think Chuck Schumer would ever in a million years propose that the U.S. should own 10% of a company that's on the stock market. And yeah, it's funny that that's happened. And it's funny, like the tariffs, like you said, like manipulating all the markets and stuff like that. It's just totally different. And and the reason why Rogan specifically makes me think of this is because he's someone that can get away with being like, I'm not a conservative, I'm pro legal weed, or I'm pro gay rights. But we've come so far from these issues representing someone's broader viewpoint that I actually think they're false flags of like we're all kind of more hodgepodgey than people think. And actually that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, 100%. And in the end, it's your impact that matters more, right? It's who you vote for and what you do. Joe Rogan, being the biggest podcaster in the world, endorsing Trump during this election was massive. And he needs to own the bad shit that Trump does, not the 10% of things Rogan likes that Trump does. It reminds me of Susan Collins, too. The only reason she still has a job in Maine is because she says she's pro-choice and she's basically an independent. But yet she voted for all of Trump's Supreme Court picks that overturned Roe v. Wade and is directly responsible for eliminating abortion rights in half the country. So how much credit should we really give Collins for saying she supports the right to an abortion when her actions have caused the complete opposite?
Definitely. And so this week, Trump went on a screed about election fraud again because he's starting to realize that Republicans are likely going to do terrible in the midterms coming up. And he thinks he'll get removed from office and be a lame duck, and he doesn't want that. So he's now monologuing back about the Save America Act. And the Save America Act, which we'll talk about after I play this clip, is maybe the most misunderstood piece of policy that's in the mainstream media because people are using it interchangeably with voter ID, and it isn't voter ID or isn't in the way that people think. But anyway, first I wanted to play this clip of Rogan and Vance talking about voter ID and elections and stuff like that.
I think they stole the election.
Yes.
The California one was a big one for me.
Why not just have voter ID?
Not only did they not have voter ID,
Yeah.
you can't show your ID. That seems like you want people to cheat.
Yeah.
And this is from the same people that were saying you have to have an ID that shows you've been vaccinated just 4 years ago.
To go to grocery
restaurant.
shopping or to go to a restaurant. I'll offer this deal as vice president of these United States that if Democrats really don't think that there's any cheating, give us voter ID.
I think they stole.
I just have to be as blunt as possible here. Joe Rogan is an idiot. I don't want to mince words here. Him saying that on his podcast is so stupid. It's actually like hard to wrap my head around.
It's such dumb circular logic of we're going to oppose this unconstitutional poll tax by requiring everyone to get this super specific, whether it's voter ID or birth certificate or whatever. And then when people point out the Supreme Court has ruled that that qualifies as a poll tax, which violates the Constitution because you're demanding people get a $300 passport to be able to vote, they say, well, just the mere fact you're opposed to this law means you're trying to overturn the election. Like, it's like you need evidence to say that, and it's so dumb because you could do that with any civil liberty, right? You could do that with why do police need warrants to search people's houses? The fact that you would even support a law saying you need a warrant to search your house means you have something suspicious in your house.
Yep. It's just a dumb. I mean, you could say about anything. The fact that you want gun regulation shows that you're going to do something, you're going to steal the guns. Or the fact that you think that we shouldn't regulate the pollution out of your factory means that you're probably polluting in your factory. Like, you can just say that about anything. And, for example, California gets a lot of slack. And like we've talked about on the show, their results come in very late, which causes a lot of drama. The reason why they come late is because they do all the voter identification post you voting. So you sign a paper that says this is who I am, blah, blah, blah. They do it, and then they do all the checks. That's what they do after the fact. But more importantly, the Save America Act, to your point, is a birth certificate or a passport. It's not a license. Okay, so if you need to get a new passport or a new birth certificate because you've changed your last name, you're a woman who is married, you're someone in the LGBTQ community who's changed their name and you need to get new identification, that costs hundreds of dollars, to your point, and months of time, of processing time. And that affects tens of millions of Americans. Like, that will probably not vote because of this. And if you think it was stolen, right, first of all, the thought that the 2020 election was stolen when Trump was currently the president is crazy. Second of all, if the election was stolen, how come they won completely every election just 2 years ago? Not stolen then. What a crying baby. And third of all, this is the thing that just pisses me off the most. This is the Heritage Foundation's election fraud map. The Heritage Foundation, obviously, far-right writers of Project 2025 have been trying their absolute hardest to push the Save America Act or some version of it for the last 50 years, effectively. So they do a lot of work trying to show that election fraud is real. That's what they're trying their best. So since the 70s or 80s when they started this, there has been billions of votes casted, literally billions, right? So you see this map, right? And you think to yourself, man, dude, Minnesota, right? Like, wow, there's a lot of colors here. Like, a lot of states are having voter fraud. The darkest color is 138 cases. And keep in mind, this map doesn't show just votes by like illegal immigrants voting in election. It's any case of fraud. So someone from prison voting, someone double voting, things of that nature. And the most times that there has been voter fraud in the last 50 years is 138 cases in Minnesota. That's over hundreds of millions of votes casted. Massachusetts, 4. Texas, 113. 71 votes. Do people realize there are tens of millions of votes casted every major election? This is the group trying their best to prove it. The most they could find in one state is 138. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy that this is even being talked about as something real. We're not talking about thousands. We're not talking about even really hundreds in most states. 2, 36, 1, 5. This is over 50 years. Like, I don't think people realize, what is this? 5? This is crazy. Like, this is such a non-topic. It's insane. This is 100% Trump's baby whining bullshit because he can't believe he lost because he's a little baby. And all these cowardly babies who have to suck up to his freaking weirdly weird whims have to pretend that this is a real issue. And so they have to go on and on about how, oh, the election could be stolen. Why won't they do voter ID? Because A, they're not asking for voter ID. They're asking for people to recreate their passport or birth certificate. And second of all, literally, it has had zero effect on any election in the last 50 years. Ugh. And that's my rant. Sorry.
Yeah, it's twofold, right? It's Trump's narcissism being unable to let go of losing 2020, and it's him laying the groundwork to overturn the results of 2026 and potentially 2028. And I think this is most scary because we're going to have a lot of very close Senate races this November. And I just think if it comes within like 1%, they're going to say it's BS, especially in Texas. If Tallarico wins in Texas, the first time a Democrat winning a statewide race in a generation, they're all going to say it's bullshit. Rogan's going to be on there going, I just don't understand. All my friends voted for Paxton. I just don't see how this is possible. It's all vibes-based bullshit nowadays with them.
Yeah, but it should be really hammered in how dumb he is for saying something like that. And it's really embarrassing that Vance, who knows the election wasn't stolen, knows this is bullshit. Like, you know, like that is a moment of two idiots being dumb on live television. And I know our listeners like Rogan. I get it. You and I both listened to him a lot in high school, in college, when it's actually appropriate for people to be listening to him. And by the way, when he was way less crazy, effectively. But like, dude, at one point you just have to call a spade. And what he's doing is so dumb. I'm not going to say it's malicious because I don't know the guy, but I'm going to say it's dumb because it's objectively dumb.
It's so dumb, and I am so tired of Rogan and Tucker Carlson are the chief offenders of just asking questions.
Yeah.
Like the amount of grace they get in the general public for saying the most batshit crazy stuff. Just do the Jews control all American politics? I don't know. I'm just asking questions though.
Yep.
The fact that I'm even asking the question says something.
Says something about what we're talking about.
Right?
Yep.
There's a famous moment where Jordan Peterson, who's obviously in the Rogan, Tucker Carlson sphere of influencer, Jordan Peterson gave an interview a couple years ago where he goes, I'm starting to develop a theory that hospitals kill more people when they save. And the interviewer goes, wow. And Jordan Peterson goes, yeah, I don't know if that's true at all, but the fact that I'm even asking the question is amazing. And it's like, no, you asking a question doesn't mean anything. You're just phrasing a conspiracy theory as
It's not amazing. It's actually not amazing. It's ridiculous. You know, how come I've never seen a pigeon be born? Yeah, it's true. Where do they come from? The fact that we're even talking about it shows something's up.
Right.
You could do that about any conspiracy theory. It's just like, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? I just feel like people want to beat around the bush about talking about him because he can, like you said, have this out of I'm just asking questions, or, you know, I'm a free thinker who's just trying to understand something. And you're allowed to be a free thinker, and he's allowed to think the things that he thinks. Of course he is. That's the country we live in. But I'm also allowed to point out that you're being an absolute idiot. And you can like his show and like you can like him on the UFC, that's fine. But I just can't believe it. I mean, another clip from the other day that I saw, it's just like shit like this, dude. It's just like at one point, like, what are we even talking about here? Listen to this.
There was a lot of it like funding rap music. Like, this is crazy. People have long said that rap music, even though, listen, you love hip-hop. I know you just got back from Kanye West. I'm a huge hip-hop fan.
We got to talk about that.
We definitely do. I love hip-hop. But there's some people that believe that gangsta rap, in particular, when it came about in the 1980s, was a part of the push to popularize it and produce it, was a part of the government, some faction of the government, some intelligence agencies wanting to create more crime, wanting to fill more private prisons, wanting to erode the fabric of society so they could push for more laws to keep you safer. This is like one of the most tinfoil-y of tinfoil hat conspiracies. But people are pointing out that right now it's like one of the rare times where no rap music is on the charts.
Yeah.
And they're saying, well, how does this coincide with USAID? Was USAID like actively promoting rap music? Was that one of the reasons why rap music was so popular? Is that real? That can't be real.
Maybe back in the day. It seems like that would be more manipulative. I don't see how.
I believe that.
Like, this is exactly what you just described, like, happening, you know? Like, not saying I think USAID is the reason why rap music was popular and the fact that it got cut is why we're in a lull. But being like, I'm just asking questions. Is it? I don't know. Is it? You can't just say something in that tone and get a free pass for whatever you're saying. Like, you can't just say it in a questioning tone and just get to say whatever you want. Did Bigfoot cook my dinner last night? I don't know. That's crazy.
There was a man with large feet in my apartment, so I got to ask
People
the
are
question.
saying that. Some people are asking those questions. You can't just say that. All he does is just go, people are saying crazy stuff about this. Is it true? I don't know. What an idiot. I'm sorry. He's just such an idiot.
Yeah, that was new levels of stupidity for Joe Rogan, which is saying something. But promoting a conspiracy that rap and hip hop only was as successful as it was because the dark secret government was promoting it because they wanted to promote crime, because then they wanted harsher laws against crime.
Like, he should be put in prison for that one. Just think it's so stupid. Dude, what are we
just
talking
right
about
off
here?
I love how he lays the groundwork by being like, I love hip hop, you love hip hop, we love Kanye. It's like, yeah, the one famous Nazi rapper you guys love. I don't think that really helps your upcoming conspiracy theory.
It's just so crazy. So crazy. And lastly, I wanted to show the people watching, and obviously we'll narrate it. But so this was launched this week. So Marco Rubio did a video on this, and we can play that too. But this week, Trump unleashed a global campaign to crush radical left terrorism. So they've been working their butts off to try to make liberal groups terrorists. And this week they did an entire push of this, but not just Trump. Rubio mainly being the biggest voice of this, but also Stephen Miller and Bessent even got involved in the mix. But yeah, this is a crazy sentence. Under the leadership of President Donald J. Trump, far-left extremism will be treated with the same seriousness and ferocity the world has long reserved for jihadist terrorism. Thoughts? Concerns?
I don't remember the 9/11 attack that killed 3,000 people done by far-left extremists, right?
Who is a far-left extremist?
No, not even the kid that tried to kill Trump.
Yeah.
He's not even a far left extremist. He
what
was
Antifa, which they've proven isn't real? Like who?
Especially letting Stephen Miller, who's basically the face of the new extremist Christian nationalism, basically, letting him be the guy that's like, I'm really concerned about this left-wing violence is insane.
It's so crazy.
It's so crazy. It just reminds me of a Netanyahu move of just, hey, in case you guys forget, I'm the only reason you're safe. Like telling their people that it's the Netanyahu playbook of just, if you're scared at all about anything in the world, remember, I'm the one that can protect you.
Yep. 100%. And it's one of those things that it worries me in relationship to the election fraud. Artificially manufacturing claims of election interference on top of saying the left wing is terrorism like jihadists. It's deeply disturbing. And it's, again, one of those things that if any other president said this, it would be the most serious thing ever. In that, in this week alone, the President of the United States said there was credible evidence that the election of 2020 was stolen and that left-wing terrorism is such a threat that it's on the same level of jihadism. In a vacuum, that is so insane. But because we have been so numbed, we just roll our eyes. It's so weird. That should carry a lot of weight.
Right. He's really throwing out all the authoritarian leader tactics at once because he's watching his poll numbers drop. And he's like, I need to stop this train from speeding downhill like it is. It's scary because when you have an unleashed ICE agency ripping people off the streets, that many of whom are legally here, it makes you think this is setting the groundwork for Stephen Miller's dream, which is to start weeding out left-wing activists outside of any immigration discussion, right? Throwing left-wing activists
100%.
in jail because of some vague connection they're inventing between the activists and violence. It does seem this is one of those things that's laying the groundwork, just like we see all over the world with countries that jail protesters and journalists all the time. It's that they'll defend it as safety measures.
It also seems like it's laying the groundwork, obviously conspiracy theory here, but for a freaking false flag attack, right? Just let's be real here. It's like they're doing everything in their power to make people hate left-wing people and also say that everything's stolen. And now they're designating everything a terrorist like jihadists, and they keep comping them to jihadists. Doesn't it just, I don't know. I worry. The sniffer is this stinks.
For sure.
Yeah, I don't like it. And speaking of terror, ICE killed another American citizen in Maine this week. Awful. Just absolutely awful. They said that this person was driving their car and they were worried that they were going to get hit by a Prius or something. I don't know. They were going 2 miles per hour, I think it said. It was Joan Sebastian Guerrero. It's just terrible. And actually a guy died in Houston too, Lorenzo Aru. So I think there have been 6 people have been killed from ICE so far this year.
Yeah, this year alone. Another frustrating detail of the 2 men, the Houston man, the Maine man that were killed, is that there were conveniently no body cameras on any of the officers involved, despite DHS promising that all of their officers will have body cameras a few months ago. So, I mean, you see this in local law enforcement, right? Oh, there's this instance of police brutality. Oh, the policeman had a body cam, but it malfunctioned, or it was low on battery that day. Yeah, these people need about 10 body cameras on them.
Yeah. They need to be
with
filmed.
the amount of bullshit they're doing. But yeah, it's so depressing. I think we need to remember that ICE is continuing to rip people off the streets. And I read that the New York Times reported earlier this month that immigration officials had detained more than 10,000 people in the last week of June alone.
Awful.
So they're going absolutely crazy. And if there's no other reason to vote for a Democrat in the congressional elections, this is it, right? To potentially rein in ICE in any way they can by having a majority in Congress.
And I think it's worth saying that when people on the left say abolish ICE, they don't mean abolish the pure existence of an immigration force. They mean abolish this iteration of ICE, which is acting as Trump's effective police force, like a secret, not a secret, but secondary police force that are murdering Americans.
Right. And I mean, it's a secret police force in the sense that they all insist on wearing masks and hiding their identities.
And apparently aren't wearing body cams, even though that was the big negotiation, like you said. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. And yeah, it's interesting that happened in Maine because, of course, Maine Senate race is heating up, and they had a debate of, trying to find a candidate to replace Platner, who, talk about future Republican commentator, Graham Platner. I'd bet the house on that one.
Yeah, I think he's going to start making his Fox News pivot pretty soon.
Yeah, he'll be with Megyn Kelly.
I've been to Ramadi.
They canceled me for being a normal guy. So what? I'm horny. Who isn't horny? That's what he's gonna do. You know it. Yeah, and yeah, it's looking like the way Maine does it is they have a group of 601 delegates pick out of a selection. It's looking like it's gonna be Jackson, right?
Yeah,
as
Troy
the
Jackson.
candidate, Troy Jackson. I think so. Right?
Yeah, I think so. So he just recently ran in the primary for governor of Maine and lost to Hannah Pingree, who's running in the general.
Wonderful.
But still seen as pretty popular. He was already endorsed by Bernie and Ro Khanna when he ran for governor, so obviously has those progressive connections. He campaigned for Platner, so he held rallies for Platner before pulling his endorsement a few weeks ago. He's the former president of the Maine Senate and a lifelong logger, which kind of reminds me of Platner in that, we have the most Maine job you could possibly think of. Logger and oyster farmers.
It's just crazy. And yeah, I do think, though, the fact that he's been in public office means that he probably won't Platner, and that something will come unveiling. For people who are potentially worried about that.
Yeah, for sure. I think it'll be interesting. I think it will be a relatively close election, assuming Jackson's the nominee. I'm not really sure. I guess I have to see some of his campaign content and speeches a little bit more to see if I can believe that he could capture the momentum that Platner had. Jury's still out, I guess. I hope he can.
Yeah, maybe we'll get him on the show, talk to him. But yeah, I don't know. I'm rooting for him. I gotta learn more about him because, yeah, I don't know about you, but I guess to end, because we have there's another story before I ramble a little bit, is that, did you see this thing about the teleprompter guy that Trump hired making money off bets of words that Trump is going to say in speeches? How crazy is that?
It's we need to make Kalshi completely illegal. Kalshi and Polymarket have to go.
It's just crazy.
Sports betting needs to be reined in as well, but we cannot be betting on what words a politician says in the speech or whether we're going to bomb Iran tomorrow or Tuesday. These are actual bets that they have. It's one of those things where it's how is this legal? How could this in any world be legal? But it is.
And when they asked Trump about it, remember, he said, hey, life's a circus. Everything's a casino now. What can you do? That's just what they think. They don't care. But yeah, I don't know.
But Caroline Leavitt is criticizing this teleprompter operator, saying, this isn't, he should be fired. This is, and prosecuted. But like you said, Trump has been promoting all these companies. Don Jr. joined Kalshi. the company involved in this as a strategic advisor in January 2025. What happened that month? Trump came into office again.
Also, let's be real here. This is also heavily tied to the crypto stuff that he's wicked involved in and the billions of dollars that they're profiting. And then also, let us not forget that Trump's negotiating that the IRS is no longer allowed to look at Don Jr.'s financials. So it's crazy. He cannot be audited, apparently.
And what's extra depressing about this teleprompter guy case, betting on what Trump will say in the speech when he has the speech in front of him, is that the CFTC that regulates these things, they only found out because Kalshi, the company, alerted them of it.
Really?
Yeah.
So Kalshi's the only person who's doing any more?
Kalshi is the only one that cares about regulating themselves, obviously because they're afraid of liability lawsuits in the future. That's the only reason they would care. But, like, isn't that sad that this only became public because Kalshi told the government, like, hey, Trump's teleprompter guy is betting on what he's going to say on the teleprompter, so you should probably look into that.
You should probably get that going. Yeah, Caroline Leavitt back in action, by the way, too. Talk about another news story. She's back. What a nice 9 months that was, not dealing with her. I'm glad she had enjoyed her maternity leave that she doesn't want anyone else to have other than herself.
Right.
Yeah, I'm glad. Last thing I want to talk about before we get out of here, and it's kind of about Maine, but it's just kind of a thesis. So obviously, like you said, Troy Jackson being Bernie endorsed, and obviously Abdul being Bernie endorsed, and all these other candidates. Do you think there's any credence to the idea that, like, Bernie needs to be more careful with his endorsements, or, like, that this is actually causing a little bit of an issue, that, like, he's maybe causing unnecessary tension given the state of affairs at, with the country being in shambles effectively right now, and maybe it's not time to litigate the Democratic Party right now? Or do you think that's too dramatic?
I think that's too dramatic because, I mean, Bernie has been championing these issues for a 50 years political career. And it's only been in the last 10 years that most liberals and progressives was like, wait, who's this Bernie guy? Like, he agrees with everything I want. So he's, like, earned the right to endorse whoever he wants, I feel like, because he's had the entire Democratic establishment against him from the start. Never mind the Republicans that think he's a communist. He's had he's been against all the Democrats and has, obviously the cards were stacked against him in 2016 with the Hillary primary. And, like, he doesn't bring that up ever. You know what I mean? Whereas, like, if that happened to Trump, he'd be obsessively talking about it every day.
If that happened to anyone, we would never hear the end of it. Yeah.
So, yeah, I almost don't think we should put too much thought into, like, what the Platner lesson is, other than just the simple, like, if you're running for an office this high up, you need to be vetted thoroughly for personal issues. Like, I think that is an important lesson, but I don't think it says anything about progressives or these new types of Democrats or anything, when, like, this is a very unique Platner position. And, like, you could argue the guy in California that had to drop out of the governor race, I think it was. I forget his name.
Henry something, or I think, right? Or Harry.
He was like more of an establishment guy.
Oh, yeah. Scumbags exist no matter what. Yeah.
But more vetting specifically on relationship history might be necessary.
Well, yeah, and I think I agree with you completely. I do think, though, too, that I think that one lesson I think that I may take away from Platner, on top of everything you just said, which I totally agree with, is how much better it would be if Schumer and Bernie worked together, though. Like, I do think that in a vacuum, like Bernie doing his thing and Schumer doing their thing and, like, them kind of competing against each other is actually a pretty poor strategy. When in reality, Bernie has been right for so many years about so many, not just messaging things, but, like, platforming things. And I do find it baffling that Schumer won't adopt anything from Bernie. Like, anything? Like, how have they not, learned, like, that these people are selling arenas out? You know what I mean? Like, why aren't we, at the minimum, taking more of a messaging front and, like, clearly that they're resonating with our base better in some way, shape, or form? Because I do think it's too much responsibility for Bernie by himself at 84 to perfectly pick every candidate in this country. Like, that's just not a real thing. You know what I mean? And I just feel like I completely agree that, like, Platner being weird is just a one-off thing of him being nuts. But I do think it is a system that is potentially leaving itself vulnerable for things to happen in the future when you aren't, like, unifying around your base, I guess, a little bit more, and taking advantage of the political stars in your roster, the AOCs, the Zorons, the Bernies, the Ro Khannas, the, even Ted Lieu and John Ossoff, even, like, I just feel like, why aren't they I just think that the answer is Schumer needs to not be in charge. And the DNC needs to move towards the Bernie view a little bit more, and then they can have a better establishment.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good point, because ideally somebody like Bernie, who was early on to the Platner campaign, and somebody like Chuck, who's basically head of the party, like, ideally they'd be working together to vet him early on in the primary process. But they don't do that because Schumer is so opposed ideologically to somebody that progressive.
Yes.
That you're, like, leaving it to a fraction of the Democratic Party in Maine to vet these people, when, like, that is part of the job of the national party, right?
Yes.
But like,
yes.
it's so clear that they're tilted so strongly towards centrist candidates and away from progressive candidates that you can't trust them to vet fairly, right? Because if similar things came up from an establishment Dem, they might downplay that and say, oh, no, they could still win in the general. But if it comes up from the progressive, they're like, no way, this is crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we're already seeing it live, like with Stevens and Abdul. You're seeing the DNC and these guys rally around Stevens, and you're seeing Bernie and AOC rally around Abdul. And like I'd imagine Troy Jackson, I'm sure he won't get the support of Schumer. It'll be just half a quarter of them who probably will rally with him. And I just don't understand. I guess that's the thing I don't understand. I just don't understand why it isn't an all hands on deck. We have to win. Like, the country is crazy. Trump is just a maniac in every shape of the word, right? It is so pivotal that Susan Collins loses, or it's so pivotal that whoever loses. Like, it just feels like there's no coordination whatsoever when it seems like it's so important to, like, get this right.
Totally. And zero input or support from the most popular Democrat and former president in the country. Right?
Yes.
Who just gave his first interview in months. But how he doesn't feel an obligation to participate more is frustrating.
Like, how big is their ego, right? That they see Bernie and AOC selling out arenas, and they're like, yeah, no. Like, remember in the beginning when the dude from Connecticut went on Jon Stewart's show and said, like, maybe Bernie was right about some stuff. And they were like, yeah. And then he did nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure he believes a lot of the same stuff Bernie does. But it isn't helping them beat the allegations that they're handcuffed to their donors when they are unable to show any degree of bravery in an era of such important things. Like, for example, and then I'll get out of here. I know the show's been wicked long. But, like, obviously Thomas Massie this week put an amendment forward to change the spending bill to give no funding to Israel, right? Because he says, this is crazy what they're doing. We can't be giving them money. Hakeem Jeffries immediately coming out and saying, we are going to oppose this. Like, even if he thinks that we should be opposing it, your entire base is saying, we want you to sign this, yes. Effectively. Now, maybe in his specific district in Brooklyn or the Bronx, I forget which one, maybe that's not the case. But don't you want to look like you've learned a lesson? I don't know. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Don't you want to give the appearance that you're listening? Even if you don't, like, I'm not saying that you should be principled, but I'm saying that if you don't inspire any confidence that you're learning, then you're going to keep losing.
Totally. And yeah, like you said, they came out so strong against it. And I think the polling has like 70-something% of Democrats say no more unconditional aid to Israel.
Why? Like, I guess, like, so then, like, it then goes to the conclusion of people listening and people around the country to say, well, that means they're bought off by AIPAC. See, AIPAC's the devil. AIPAC controls everything. Look at how cowardly they are. And I can't prove that's true, but I also can't prove it's not true when they act like this. You know what I mean? Like, I just wish that, like, they're just so bad at politics, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, they're not good at politics. And yeah, I do hope that one of the lessons I was hoping that the Democrats would learn after Trump won again in 24 was that we can't keep fractioning our party between like the progressives and the centrists. Like, it has to just be a more, middle ground between the two viewpoint. And that has just not happened whatsoever. I think, do you think that's fair to say? Like, a year and a half in, I think pretty confidently they have not merged ideas at all.
For sure. I mean, like, the only win from my point of view is Nancy Pelosi finally decided to retire at age 89 or however old she was. Like, but why Schumer is there, and then why Jeffries is insisting on the same playbook as Pelosi makes no sense to me when the country is obviously changing and Trump has successfully transformed his party to be one that's seen as supporting the blue collar worker, which I don't believe is true, but he's successfully transformed the messaging of the party so that people believe that. And that's obviously what the Democrats need to do. That's what Bernie's whole political life has been about. But Schumer just seems immune to it, or like these pressures to be more aggressively populist and pro-working class.
It's just so weird because, you see a headline like this is on The Guardian, right? Of top House Democrats vow to oppose bid to cut U.S. military aid to Israel. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries calls amendment overly broad as party grapples with backlash over Israel. Dude, they're gonna fumble this so hard that Republicans are now gonna become the party that opposes Israel? Like, dude, how is that happening? You know what I mean? Like, we are literally watching the Republican Party now taking that position. It's right. Crazy. It's crazy. That would be the biggest fumble. If somehow after the 2024 election loss, Republicans can then rebrand to say, actually, we're the ones against funding Israel, and Democrats want to keep it going. Holy shit.
Which JD Vance is laying the groundwork already for that.
Big time. Yeah, for sure. It's just crazy. They totally fumbled this. It's just a disaster. Jeffries is a disaster.
Yeah, and the disconnect, because these establishment Democrats have definitely become more vocally anti-Netanyahu, but Netanyahu's running everything in Israel. So, like, this is what's so frustrating about Haley Stevens in Michigan, is that she's going out of her way to say she actually doesn't support everything Israel does. She's actually extremely critical of Netanyahu, thinks he needs to be reined in, but then she votes for continued unconditional support. If you think Netanyahu's that bad of a guy, probably don't continue giving him billions of dollars of weapons.
It's unbelievable.
Right? It's not adding up, and it's not responding to what the voters want at all.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing, right? That, like, whether I think it's over-indexed in people's minds or not, it is what is in people's minds, and you need to respond to your party's demands, or you will not get people to go vote.
Right, and Trump is literally in the middle of a massive war because Israel wanted him to. That's the reason we're in this war. So if there was ever a time for the Democrats to say, this is a giant difference between us and Republicans, we actually don't want to keep giving a blank check to a country like Israel that's spending it on killing innocent people, this is the time to do it. Crazy. You could argue Trump is the most pro-Israel president we've had in recent history, because of what he was willing to do in Iran, where America had pretty much zero interest in. This is the time for the Democrats to, like, truly separate themselves, and they're not doing it, other than the young progressive candidates.
Yeah. It's so odd to me that I can't list more than a couple of things that I'd say they've changed their tune on since losing the 2024 election. Like, what have they changed in a year and a half? They go on more podcasts now?
They're trying to find the Joe Rogan of the left.
Us. Maybe we'll be the Joe Rogan of the left. Abdul handled us like the Joe Rogan of the left, to his credit.
Yeah.
He immediately started dealing. which I liked. But anyway, that's it. This is a long show, but we had a lot to catch up on. This is a big one for all the people who made it all the way down here. Nice job. I always like to give them a shout.
Thank you.
It's very devout. Yeah. Do you got anything before we get out of here?
No, I think that's it.
All right. We'll be back next week, and get ready for our interviews.
They're coming.
Also, and this is actually, if you've made it this long, then you may be interested. We have Lonely Liberal t-shirt mock-ups now. We wore them to the interview. Would people buy these? Like, if we started selling these for like $30, would people buy Lonely Liberal t-shirts? Because what I don't want to happen is me and Rick order 500 Lonely Liberal t-shirts and they're just sitting in my apartment forever. And like 10 of them get sold, and I'm just like, what an idiot. I spent $1,000 on Lonely Liberal shirts. So yeah, let us know. media@thelonelyliberal.com if you'd actually buy a Lonely Liberal t-shirt, because if not, you may have to wait a little bit.
Yeah.
On the merch.
Let us know though. I think they look great. So
they do. They're a good shirt. They're nice. And I have a lot of ideas too. So I would love it if people wanted to buy our shirts. We could really go to town with the donkey.
Big time.
Yeah, okay. All right, anyway, I'll talk to you later, dude.
See you later.